Hey, everybody. He's Drew. I'm Ted. We're not doing a movie tonight. We're recording kind of late in the week, but we do have a surprise. We have a special guest later on this evening. This is Vikings Report with Drew and Ted. Drewster, how are you?
Hey, Ted Glover. Sorry I've been feeling a little down lately, but we got 3 wins going on the road here for our Vikings. So
Yeah, from 1-4 to 4-4, and just as things seem to be taking a turn for the better. We're kind of going turbo mode tonight. We've got no movie. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, and we got our special guest. Before we say what time is it, I want to just send out condolences to the family of Scott Backstrom. Scott Admiral Big Gun Backstrom was a diehard Vikings fan, part of the Vikings world order, a friend of mine. Heard that he passed away today from cancer. Cancer just sucks. He was a great dude. If anybody deserves to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl, it was him, and I'm sure in Valhalla he will someday. To Scott's family, our thoughts and prayers are with you at this time. He is going to be missed by a lot of people, so rest in peace, Scott. All right, buddy.
yeah,
What time is it?
Ted, I'm cooler than you are. So why don't you fix your little problem, get to Atlanta, and let's light some candle.
That's right. He's right. I don't give a damn, Scarlett. Light that candle. Yes, resume the countdown.
All right, I'm cooler than you are. Why don't you fix your little problems and light this candle?
He's right. Let's light this candle.
He surely is. Light the candle.
Yes. Resume the countdown.
All right, there we go. Ruby's in the background somewhere. She's got stuff going on, so she's all going to be able to hit record tonight. But either way, hi, Ruby. Hope you're doing well. So real quick, for nobody cares about your fantasy team, brother, I got 2 out of 3 wins. I won again last week. You finished second for like every week we played this. You finished second.
Yeah, so far the wins come down to Toonses has 6 weeks. You have 2. And that's it. I have yet to win, but the second place finishes are still stacking 16 points.
I would bet you probably have more points than I do because I've only got 2 wins. The rest I was in second or third. I mean, you were consistent, brother, if nothing else.
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, none of us have as much as Toonses, but I bet you I'm still leveraging a little bit of point action, and hopefully I can get my first win this week.
Got a lot of folks playing this year. It's really cool. I like the new scoring format.
We got quite a dogfight going. It should be a great second half of the season. Thank you for playing. Thank you for tuning in for episode 112. And here we are.
And we got a lot to talk about episode 112. We kind of delayed the recording this week because we knew the trade deadline was hitting.
Right.
Wasn't sure if the Vikings were going to be big players, but they did make a couple moves. The first one, the kind of the minor move, if you will, they traded left guard Ezra Cleveland.
I would have thought a starting guard in the NFL, left or right, would at least get a 4th or a 5th. I mean, fifth at the minimum. I don't know, 5th and 6th, people say there's not really much of a difference. Well, there's 30 or 40 players difference. I mean,
yeah,
I think he was worth a little more than a 6th, but it is what it is. Reisner's in there. He's going to start. Hopefully he stays healthy. Hopefully they all stay healthy. But how did you feel about the compensation on that?
A little light, but here's my thing. Cleveland was probably not going to come back at the end of the year. The best the Vikings could do in a comp pick would be a 5th, but that'd have to be a year down the road. So it's probably would have been a 6th had he left and they gotten a pick for him. Reisner, like you said, is playing well. Chris Reed, they activated off the NFI list, so he's eligible to practice now, which I'm sure played a part in it. Look, I don't care. I mean, he's a starting guard. I think it kind of stinks for depth for the rest of this year because if Reisner gets hurt, you could have put Cleveland back in, but whatever. I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep over it now that he's lost his job to Reisner.
No, we're just going to move forward on that one. And he's going to Jacksonville, which he should fit in right there. They need a lot of offensive line help, so who knows? Maybe the 6th rounder next year will be a stud, Ted.
Maybe. We'll find out. now, if you look at it, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has amassed like 9 draft picks for next year's draft. I think he's doing that so he can accumulate as many picks as he can to make moves in this upcoming draft, potentially for a quarterback if they're still thinking that way.
Unless we clean house and he gets fired. Everybody may be fired here within the next.
Yeah. No, this isn't Las Vegas, man. We don't we don't fire coaches and GMs less than 2 years into it. The big news, if you will, they traded Arizona Cardinals quarterback Josh Dobbs. They got Josh Dobbs and a 2024 7th round pick for a 2024 6th round pick. So, what do you think of that deal?
The cost or whatever, it's not bad. I mean, I think it's a good move. I like the move. And we're going to talk a little bit about Josh Dobbs, and I'll tell you what the problem is with him and what he does good. In terms of a backup quarterback, he's one of the top backup quarterbacks in the league. Probably because he's been a backup quarterback on every team in the league. But in terms of a guy that gives you a chance to win, he still gives us a chance to win this year. I like the move because it's not just throwing in the towel. What are they, 1-7 in Arizona? But he's kept them in all those games. Ted, you and I always talk about you want a backup that can have a chance to win. And I think that's what Dobbs is, because Mannion isn't. He's not going to win you any games. So I like the move. I like the move. We're going to talk a little bit about him and what he does good and what he does bad. And I think he gives the Vikings a chance to win, and their defense is coming on. When you got a defense, you always got a chance. So what do you think about it? I'm happy with it.
I'm fine with it, to be quite honest. I didn't think the Vikings were going to make a move. I kind of thought they were going to stand pat, or if they were going to make a move, it was going to be for a free agent. Like, people mentioned Colt McCoy, who'd been with O'Connell in Washington, I believe, was familiar with the offense. So I didn't expect a trade because I thought if they were going to get if you're going to go out and try and get a starter, you're not going to get a guy that equals the loss of Kirk Cousins. I think would have cost too much, but you've got Kyler Murray coming back in Arizona. Josh Dobbs started the year with the Cardinals. He's got comparable stats to Jordan Love and Justin Fields from 2023. I look at it as more of a depth move. The Vikings have already committed to Jaren Hall this week, which I think is the right move. He's the only guy that's been on the roster all season that could step in, knows the playbook, and could play. I mean, people saying, well, throw Josh Dobbs in there. Well, no, that just reminds me of the other Josh Freeman game, that infamous Monday night game back in whatever year it was, 2010, 2011, I can't remember. Josh Freeman went 11 for 52 for 86 yards or whatever it was. But I like it that now they've got Hall and you've got Nick Mullins still on IR, and they needed to get somebody. So what I would imagine is they'll, at least for this week, they'll promote Sean Mannion off of the practice squad, put him on the active roster. They'll probably make Dobbs the emergency third quarterback, just give him the playbook and see how much he can absorb between now and Sunday, and then go with Hall and then probably Mannion if Hall were to get hurt. But I think coming after that, once Mullins comes off IR, I would expect it to be either Mullins or Hall, and then the other guy is the backup until Dobbs gets up to speed, put Mannion back on the practice squad, and that's what the Vikings quarterbacks are going to be for the rest of the season, I would imagine.
You know what it tells me, Ted? I mean, like you said, they probably just went with what they have, Hall, Mannion, and Mullins or whatever. This tells me, and I think it's a smart move, because this tells me we're not throwing in the towel on this season.
No.
I don't think we're going to go anywhere. I don't want to piss off everybody, but Hall and Mannion and those guys aren't going to get you to the playoffs. You have to at least have a chance. I think Dobbs gives us a chance. So they made a move to get a guy that keeps the season alive. I hope Hall just becomes a starter next week and takes off with it every game.
I do too.
That's what I really want. But I don't think he's ready, and I think we're going to see that this Sunday. But they went out and acquired a guy that gives us a chance to win, keeps the season alive. Anything can happen if you can win games. So I like the move.
Yeah. And we'll talk about what our expectations are for Jaren Hall here in a little bit when we do our preview. You talked about not throwing in the towel. I think it was an important message to send. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah had a press conference. He had players come up to him and say, hey, don't sell. We think we can do this. And I think that was an important message to send to the locker room that, hey, we believe in you. I didn't think they were going to be full-on sellers anyways, but there were rumors of them trading a guy like Danielle Hunter, which didn't materialize. They did trade Ezra Cleveland, but they got Dalton Reiser to start in his place. So I think that sent a pretty clear message that the Vikings want to remain competitive. And like you said, I hope Jaren Hall just steps in and takes over the job and never gives Josh Dobbs or Nick Mullins an opportunity to step on the field because he's playing so well.
Plus, if he does that, what you just said, there's our quarterback for next season.
Mm-hmm.
If Hall gets on a roll and he becomes the starting quarterback for this season, that handles a lot of questions for the offseason and the draft talk.
It does.
So I'm 100% in the Hall corner. If it works out where Hall becomes the guy and Dobbs never sees the field, I am all for that.
Let me ask you this. So if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be in it. They'd be the 7th seed. We want Jaron Hall to play well. Don't get me wrong. But we kind of expect him to struggle. Look, he's a 5th-round rookie. On Purple Pain Forums, there was a whole list. Somebody put a list of guys drafted where Jaron Hall was or later, and it's not a very illustrious list. How far do you go with Jaron Hall before, in terms of how long do you let him play before you realize, look, we have got to put in either Mullins or Dobbs before it's too far gone? Is it 2 games, 3 games? Where do you sit with this?
Probably 2 games max. Our great scenario of Hall taking off and being this wondrous quarterback is probably about less than 10%. And I'm not trying to be Drew Downer. I'm just telling you, I've watched a lot of quarterbacks come in this league, and it takes a while to get used to what's going on. He's going to get this Sunday. If he looks super terrible this Sunday, they might get Dobbs ready for the week after. If there's anything Dobbs is good at, it's getting to a team and playing football. He's done that with 7 different teams. He gets acquired by Tennessee, all these other teams, and he starts to play right away. The guy's a rocket scientist, 4.0 student at Tennessee. He's smart dude. He can pick up the offense. He's been through this ringer of football, different teams so many times that he would be ready next week if you needed him. But after 2 games, if Hall is visually the problem and we can all see it, then you got to get Dobbs in there as early as next Sunday. That would probably be the day to start him, because you don't want to go 4-6.
No, I think a couple things play into it. When is Nick Mullins going to be ready? I mean, he's eligible to come off IR next week, and then is he healthy and can he play? And if that's the case or not the case, if he can't come off IR or isn't ready to play, then how much of the playbook has Josh Dobbs learned?
Right.
I agree with you. I think by next week, Dobbs will be ready to go. If Hall plays well, I think he'll get a chance to start again next week. They might want to give Dobbs like an extra week if they can afford to get him fully absorbed into the playbook. And if Hall struggles and Mullins can go, I would expect Mullins might go next week if he's able. But that's just me speculating, pure speculation.
If you remember back in 2013 through 2016, he was the dual threat quarterback. He was the big name coming out in 2016 into the 2017 draft of Mr. Dual Threat. I mean, his senior season, he led the nation in touchdowns scored. He had 27 passing, 12 rushing, and he even had 1 receiving, believe it or not. Should probably start out the whole Josh Dobbs talk, Ted, with this guy is a turnover machine, and he always has been. That's his drawback. Josh Dobbs turns the ball over too much. That's probably why he's been on a bunch of NFL teams, because head coaches can't stand guys who turn the ball over. At Tennessee, he had 53 touchdown passes in his career there and 29 interceptions. That is not a good ratio, Ted.
No,
that is not. If you're going to throw 53 touchdowns, the most picks you want to have is like maybe 12 at the most. And his accuracy, he's always struggled with accuracy, turning the ball over. Not just picks, Ted, fumbles. Week 1, he fumbled 3 times against the Commanders.
God, did he really?
And he lost 2 of them. Now, if Kirk Cousins fumbled 3 times and lost 2 of them, this fan base would go nuts.
Yeah.
So it's good that we talk about these turnovers, because that's what Dobbs is. That's the way he's always been. And that might present a problem. You fans got to get ready. You got to get ready, get the booze ready or whatever, because that's what he does. Week 4, he fumbled against the Niners, but he recovered it. Week 5, he fumbled against Cincinnati. Week 6, he fumbled against the Rams. Fumbled in week 7. Week 8, he fumbled again. Josh Dobbs has fumbled the football 5 straight weeks. So he has 9 turnovers by himself this year. And I look back on some of his time, Tennessee and all those, that's been his problem. Tennessee played 2 games and threw 4 picks. That's the bad side of Dobbs. That's why he's been on so many teams, and that's why he's not a starter. But turning the page into he's turned into like the premier backup quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's ever going to be a starter again, because he can't stop turning the ball over. He did at the beginning of this season. The first 4 games of 2023, his first 123 passes, no interceptions. And then the last half of this season, these last 4 games, it's all gone to hell. Fumbles, and picks, and I know it irritates coaching staffs, but his dual threat ability, we remember him at Tennessee, dude. That guy was crazy. And Pittsburgh drafted him to take over for Big Ben. Turned it over too much, got traded to the Jags. He's rushed for 19 first downs. That's something we haven't seen this year, is our quarterback rushed for first downs. So he can move the sticks. He's mobile. Had 10 starts in the NFL, which isn't really a lot. He's won one of them. You know, look at the team he's been on. Hasn't been something to write home about.
Yeah, he's played for Arizona, which is just they're kind of a tire fire of a franchise right now. Well, on a positive note, if he turns it over in the red zone, that will be par for the course for this Vikings offense this year. So he'll fit right in. It's a fair point. This team, as we have seen, does not have a big margin of error. Mistakes kill this team. That the reason they started 1-3 is because at one point they were -8 or -9 in turnover margin. You cannot turn the ball over and then not get the ball back via turnover and win football games. Now the Vikings have been better at reversing that trend. Their turnover margin is down. It's down to -5. I think it was like -8 or -9 a few weeks ago, and that's good. But you have got to be able to hold on to the ball. And a team like this that has some pretty significant flaws, if you turn the ball over and give the opponent an extra possession, especially if it's on your side of the field, you're not going to win a whole lot of ball games.
To not be a Drew Diner 100%, you know what we get now is a little movement back there. We get a guy that can move out of the pocket, run for first downs. He can move out of the pocket, keep plays alive. And who knows, with the Vikings offensive line, which is a lot better than the Cardinals, and the weapons the Vikings have, maybe Dobbs won't feel the need to press so much. Maybe O'Connell can work with him on that. If Josh Dobbs doesn't turn the ball over, he can lead this team to some wins, man. He can.
See, that was my next point. I wanted to bring this up. I'm glad you did. Is that if you look at the weapons he's had in Arizona and you compare them to what he has now in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson coming back next week, you've got some really talented playmakers. I think Vikings receivers have a better opportunity to win those one-on-one battles than the guys he was throwing to in Arizona.
I think so too. And I think the Vikings have a better defense to turn the field over, maybe give them some short fields. Also, let me throw this out. This might be the biggest intangible of all, Ted. Let's not forget, Ted Glover, back in 2014, when Josh Dobbs was a sophomore for the Volunteers of Tennessee, he was the MVP of that Tax Slayer Bowl, Ted.
Oh, well, there you go. How was he not a first-round pick?
I want to throw that out there. When they beat Iowa, he was the MVP of that game.
It's not the Mayo Bowl, but still. And he is now wearing number 15 for your purple and gold Minnesota Vikings, baby.
Gary Quazzo? Gary Quazzo's old number?
Gary Quazzo. Let's hope he plays better than Quazzo. All right. That's it for news. We're going to go ahead and bring in our special guest, and we'll get our preview for the Falcons game out of the way. Folks, welcome back. We didn't really talk about Purple Pain Forums when we started. That's because we have one of Purple Pain Forums royalty here with us this evening. Dan Chad, or Dan, one of the original guys and lead content producers over at Purple Pain Forums. They are your online everything for Minnesota Vikings news and information. If you are sick of the mindless, pointless arguments you end up with on Twitter or some Facebook pages, head on over to Purple Pain Forums. Dan's one of the good guys that puts in a lot of good stuff over there. Daniel, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much for having me on.
Drew, we better bring our A game because I know you've read some of Dan's stuff, and the dude is like forgotten more Vikings football than I'll ever learn. So
he's got this stuff down. Let me tell you, Mr. Dan Chad, I'm looking forward to seeing how he previews this Falcons battle coming up.
So, Dan, what we do is as we go down the big board here, it's a little bit modified this week because we got three folks doing it, but it's still based off the old NFL Today show that Drew and I used to watch growing up with Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek Snyder. We start with quarterback. We go all the way down through the list and end with intangibles. Because what are intangibles, Drew?
They're things you can't see, son.
There's stuff you can't see, son. I asked my dad what intangibles were once, Dad. He said, son, there's stuff you can't see. Just don't worry about it. So, Dan, we're going to start with quarterback. First of all, I want you to talk about the Josh Dobbs trade, if you would, what your thoughts were on it, if you like it, didn't like it, whatever. And then give us who you think has the advantage between these two teams in the quarterback situation. And what do you think of Jaron Hall? Just go for it. Run it all out there.
So, to start off with, I am a fan of the Josh Dobbs trade. I have watched some of the Cardinals games so far this year, and I have been somewhat impressed with, because I think a lot of us expected the Cardinals to be the worst team in football, and while they have, their offense actually hasn't been terrible. And while Dobbs, he's kind of overmatched as a passer, he's been a very sneaky good rushing quarterback. And for what the Cardinals have, below average offensive line, not great weapons, he's done okay. And I think we can project, if he does get the starting job, which is a whole nother can of worms, I do think we can project some improvement from him. On the Jaron Hall front, I'm not a super big fan of his. I had him as a 6th-round prospect back in draft season. Thought he was okay in the preseason. He's got some pluses. He's got the intangibles, leadership. He's got a decent arm. I like some of he's got some good numbers he put up at BYU, but I just don't think he's quite ready yet. But I heard about in training camp, he holds on to the ball for a long time, and we saw that in his first drive in the Packers game. So I think he can be okay, and it's going to depend on how much Kevin O'Connell is going to scheme around his skill set, especially since Dobbs is very similar style-wise to Hall rather than to Mullins or Cousins. So as for against the Falcons, I am going to give the Falcons the edge because Taylor Heineke has experience. He's below average quarterback, but sometimes he plays with that rabbit's foot. Sometimes he can pull off those big plays, or he can totally have a clunker. And against Flores' defense, definitely possible, but I'm going to give the Falcons a small edge there.
Drew, before I get your opinion on the quarterback situation, I asked Drew this in our opening segment before you joined us, Dan. How much of a leash would you give Jaron Hall before you say, look, I've got to bench you and either go with Nick Mullins once he's healthy or Josh Dobbs?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's what she said. Sorry, we're perpetually 12 on this show, Dan. I'm sorry.
Welcome to the show, Dan Chat.
I would take it week by week. Josh Dobbs did have a pretty quick turnaround when he started his first game last year with the Titans. He had gotten claimed off of a practice squad. If Hall is a disaster, I say bench him right away. But if Hall's good enough to where you think there's more, maybe we can project some improvement, then yeah, I say we give him some more rope.
All right, that's a good answer. Fair enough. Drew, what do you got for the quarterback situation?
I had a tough time. I found out today from the corporate office of Vikings report that I have to give a check mark.
Oh,
for the quarterback situation.
They ruled on that, did they?
Yeah, I was just going to go. I can't give a check mark here, but I'm going to go with our old friend, Taylor Heineke, the master of the preseason games.
Yeah.
I have to give him the check because of what Dan Chat said with the experience, but also Atlanta has the 8th best pass defense in the league with a guy who hasn't played with Hall. So that might present a little bit of a problem. So I have to give Heineke my check mark also.
Yeah, I'm going to have to as well. He played pretty well in the Vikings, against the Vikings last year when he was still on the Commanders. Threw an absolute seed to, I think it was Terry McLaurin for a touchdown that the ref took out Harrison Smith when he was going for a pick, if you remember that play. Vikings still came back and won that game. I just give it to Heineke just based on experience alone. I do believe that this new defense that Brian Flores has is going to give him a lot of fits. I just wonder how Jaron Hall's first NFL game, if he's going to have more or less fits, just simply for the fact he's never started the NFL before. So just for the veteran edge, if you will, I will give that to the Atlanta Falcons as well. Drew, you want to talk about the running game?
I would like to talk about the running game.
Because I don't.
They definitely have the check mark for me, the Falcons, with the running game. Bijan Robinson and Algier.
Yeah.
I think Algier played with Hall, though, at BYU. They're 10th in rushing, Ted. That's their game.
Yeah.
The whole game hinges on if the Vikings can stop their rush game, they got a really good chance of winning this game. But they're very good at rushing the football. The Vikings, they haven't sold me on their running game, Ted. It's getting better, but they haven't sold me on their running game. So I give a really slight edge to the Falcons with the running game.
Yeah, I'm giving a big edge to the Falcons. The Vikings can't run the ball to save their life. If that's going to be the downfall for Jaron Hall, and if he only gets one start, it's going to be because the Vikings aren't going to be able to run. They're going to force the Vikings to pass, and Jaron Hall is going to get in over his head. That is my big fear for Sunday. If they can run the ball effectively, that's going to take a lot of pressure off Hall. That's going to make the Vikings offense just that much more balanced, which it hasn't been all season. And I hope that means they're going to get a lot more Cam Akers in the lineup than we have seen up to this point. But for right now, I've got to give the check mark to the Falcons as well. Dan, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, the Falcons are definitely better. Yeah, Madison and Akers, they aren't it. Bijan Robinson, he hasn't quite exploded yet, but he is very talented.
Receiving game, I'll kick this one off. I like the Vikings here. I mean, there's really nobody on the Falcons that stands out. I mean, Kyle Pitts was the unicorn tight end that was supposed to revolutionize the tight end position in the NFL. Laporta, for the rookie for Detroit Lions, has more touchdowns than Pitts does this year. Then you look over on the other side, even with Justin Jefferson out, I still like the Vikings receiving game. Jordan Addison has stepped up to fill the void that Justin Jefferson left when he went out on IR. KJ Osborne has stepped up. TJ Hawkinson is back to form. And Brandon Powell is even making some plays. I likened him to Jarius Wright last week, and I'm sticking with that analogy. So I'm giving this one to the Vikings. Dan, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely heavy on the Vikings here. Falcons just don't really have anything outside of Drake London that'll scare you, and he's got a groin problem, so it seems like he's 50-50 to play. Nobody else, Kyle Pitts is not playing like he was in his rookie year. Jonnu Smith is playing every snap, and, Mac Hollins, Van Jefferson, none of those guys really scare you.
If you got a groin problem, I hear there's medication you could take for that, but that's just me.
Well, maybe you can try. You got till Sunday.
So you giving it edge to the Vikings as well?
Yep.
All righty. Drew, what about you?
My groin has been in tip-top shape ever since about 1979. Everything you guys just said was spot on. London did not practice again today, and I don't think he's going to play. And that really, really presents a lot of problems offensively for the Falcons. You know what's strange about Atlanta is I think they're the only team in the league where they have one wide receiver leading the team and then two tight ends right behind them that lead in receptions. You don't see that a lot in the NFL.
You don't. No.
Kevin O'Connell's got to be ready, and Flores got to be ready to defend that, because if they're not used to seeing, the tight ends get so many catches, then it's definitely something they're going to have to game plan. But the Vikings definitely, even with the backups, got better wide receiver unit, I think. The Falcons only have 7 touchdowns receiving this year, and the Vikings have 18. Oh, something I forgot to mention earlier, Ted. Josh Dobbs has more rushing touchdowns the last 2 weeks than the Vikings have all season.
Oh, that's cool.
He has 2 the last 2 weeks, 3 on the year, and the Vikings have 1.
Maybe they could put him in on goal lines. Maybe score a touchdown or run the
Yeah,
ball.
maybe.
Whatever.
Yeah, Vikings get the nod at wide receiver.
All right, Drew, why don't you start us off with the offensive line?
I think both of these units' offensive lines are top 5. I think the Vikings are probably close to the top in the league, if you ask me. They are coming together. They're gelling. Both top 5 units. I think being the Falcons have given up 26 sacks, I'm going to give the check mark to the Vikings. But the Falcons to a man have a really good offensive line right down the line. So it's really close. Both units are good, but the fact that Falcons have given up more sacks than the Vikings, I'm going to give the Vikings the check mark there on the offensive line.
Dan, what about you?
Am I allowed to say that they're even, or do I have to pick someone?
We'll let you push. We'll let you do a push if you want.
Yeah, because I think I'm going to put a push, because the Falcons do have a very good offensive line. They've got maybe the best guard in football in Chris Lindstrom on the interior. So I would take their interior, but our offensive tackles are better. But yeah, I think that's a good point from Drew about the sacks. The Vikings offensive line is doing better in pass pro, but not as good in run blocking.
Let me ask you this. With the Ezra Cleveland trade and Dalton Risner moving into the starting left guard spot, do you think it was an okay trade? And do you expect the Vikings to kind of, I don't want to say abandon the run, because Cleveland was a better run blocker than Risner, but focus more on passing the football?
That's a trick. I mean, Kevin O'Connell loves passing the ball so much. I don't think he's ever going to abandon it. I think we saw at the end of the Packers game, even when Hall came in, he still dropped back like 5 times in those 2 drives when we could have just kept feeding the ball. So I think the passing game is going to keep going. It's a weird move because it feels like Cleveland should have gotten more than a 6, but teams just don't ever trade offensive linemen at mid-season. So I get it. We had depth. I do think losing Cleveland is a small hit, but I don't think it's a huge deal. We weren't going to re-sign him, so might as well get the high 6th-round pick.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking. For me, I'm going to give the edge to the Vikings. I just like the way this offensive line is starting to gel. Risner I think has been very good in his 2 starts, which obviously was the lead in for the trade Ezra Cleveland to the Jags. I do agree with you that Chris Lindstrom is probably the best interior lineman probably in the NFL, but when you look at the Vikings from left to right, I really like what they bring to the table. So I'm going to take the Vikings here. Dan, why don't you tell us about the front seven, the defensive line, and the linebackers? Switching to the other side of the football.
I am going to take the Vikings, and the reason why is going to be because of edge rusher. Because when I was doing the analysis of the Falcons depth chart, they really don't have an edge rusher that scares you. They have a couple guys in the interior, in Campbell and Onyemata, who can create pressure, but nobody off the edge. They just don't have a Danielle Hunter. Linebackers, I'd say we're about even. I do like their interior defensive line a little more, but I think having Hunter gives us the edge.
Okay. Drewster?
Everything he just said is spot on. The Grady Jarrett thing kind of tilted it to the Vikings side for me because it's pretty equal. I like Bud Dupree, but the Vikings defensive front seven, especially the last 2 weeks, they've been on fire. Guys are rallying into the football. Guys look more comfortable in their role. And how many sacks does Atlanta have on the season? 15? That's not a lot. We have, 23? So I think with Grady Jarrett in there, I might do the push thing, but that's a huge loss for the Falcons. Vikings get my check mark for the front seven.
Grady Jarrett made a guy like Calais Campbell better and vice versa. And now if you're the Vikings, no disrespect to Albert Huggins, who is Grady Jarrett's replacement, and not to be confused with the great Albert Finney, the actor, but Albert
that is actually
or Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch.
Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch.
Love Huggy Bear, big fan of the show.
Who wouldn't be a big fan of this show if your name is Huggy Bear?
His son played running back for Michigan.
Get out of here, really?
No, Vargas. Remember Vargas?
Yeah.
The old running back? That's his son.
Get out of here.
That's Huggy Bear's kid.
Well, I don't like Huggy Bear now, but whatever. Or his kid. You guys hit on this. Losing Grady Jarrett brings this whole unit down to the point where you don't have to focus a lot of your attention in blocking schemes and pass protection on one guy. And now where Garrett Bradbury would have probably needed help on almost every play with Grady Jarrett, he's more than likely not going to need that now. And it's going to allow the Vikings, hopefully, to be able to run the ball a little bit better. Dan, like you said, the Vikings edge rushers are way better. I give the edge to the Vikings here as well. Drewster, what about the secondary?
One of the more stronger parts of the Falcons team. I mean, they are 8th in pass defense. They don't even allow 200 yards a game up till now to their pass defense. I think it's at 194 or something. Their safeties, Grant and Bates. I mean, we got some good safeties in Minnesota. Those guys are really good too. I had to give the check mark to the Falcons, though.
Did you really?
I did. I love the Vikings secondary, but for this game, remember we picked this stuff for this game, and I know they've been playing really well the last couple of weeks. This is a strong point for the Falcons. Okudah, Terrell. I mean, they got a really solid secondary, and I also gave them the check mark because of the quarterback going with Jaron Hall. He's going to have a tough time getting the ball down the field. He is. I hope KOC cuts him loose on some skinny post routes or some seam routes to Hawkinson up the middle. But if Jaron Hall plays gun shy against this secondary, we're going to be kicking field goals all day. So I'm giving the Falcons my check mark, and I'm not happy about it, but I got to check it like I see it, Ted.
Okay, that's fair. Dan, who do you got in the secondary here?
I'm also giving my check to the Falcons. Jesse Bates III is an absolute stud. I'd say he's on the level of Harrison Smith in his prime.
Totally.
And they've got some pretty good corners there. Terrell's their top guy. I don't feel great about the Vikings cornerback room right now, but at least we can say the rest of the defense is kind of covering them up. I don't think our corners will have too many problems with this receiving core, but yeah, the Falcons are better.
All right, well, you two are communists, and I'm giving my check mark to the Minnesota Vikings. And you guys brought up very good points in Jaron Hall's inexperience, and Bates and Terrell and Ohio State alum Jeff Okudah. I get all that. I think the scheme that Brian Flores is going to throw at Taylor Heineke is going to be something that he has not seen before. And when you look at the way the Vikings have been playing in the secondary lately, not only do you have Harrison Smith and Cam Bynum, but Josh Patelis has been playing great football. Byron Murphy's coming on. Caleb Evans is playing well. Mekhi Blackman is coming on, made some great plays last week against the Packers. I just feel like the Vikings are finally getting this defense and they're going out and they're making plays. I don't say that to take anything away from the Falcons defense, the Falcons secondary, because they very well may feast on Jaren Hall being at his first NFL start and all that. But I'm going to put my faith in Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings secondary. All right, Drewster, tell us about the red zone. Who do you like in the red zone here, the Falcons or the Vikings?
Last week we talked about how the Packers had such higher ranks than the Vikings in the red zone. They were top 10 in both offense, defense, which the Vikings weren't. And we picked the Vikings because they had to play better in the red zone. That's what this game's going to come down to the red zone, Ted. It's going to be, the game's going to finish in the mid-20s. It's either going to be a Joseph or a Fu Man Koo, whatever his name is, Young Ho Koo. One of them is going to be the difference in this game. It's going to be tight all the way down the line, I feel. But the red zone will be critical. And their red zone defense, Ted, is good. It's, fifth in the league. Yeah. We cannot get down there. And, with Jaren Hall, where are you going to expect in the red zone? Not anything too flashy. I think this is a game where Jaren Hall should use his legs down there inside the 10. That's what he did at BYU, and he killed people. They got to cut him loose and let him be the quarterback he wants to be. And that would give us some help on the red zone. But rookie quarterback, first start against the fifth-ranked red zone defense, I had to give it to the Falcons.
Dan?
I'm also going to have to give it to the Falcons. I had seen a stat where Vikings offense is top 5 outside of the red zone and then was number 32 in the red zone. We do have a lot of different wild cards, but no Kirk, no Jefferson. I don't know. I feel like we're gonna get a lot of Greg Joseph field goals coming in.
Yeah, I am too. The only way I see the Vikings ending up coming out better at the end of this game than the Falcons is, Drew, is what you said. If Jaren Hall can use his legs, make the Falcons defense kind of guess what they're going to do, and he can score a couple touchdowns that way. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Special teams, Dan, who you got?
I'm also going to have to give it to the Falcons because I do not trust Greg Joseph. And Younghoe Koo has been pretty good. Oh, what's going on there?
I'm pointing down. I agree 100%. I don't trust Greg Joseph.
I thought you might be big Joseph fans or something. But Koo has been a lot more reliable. I think both the punters are pretty close. Wright and Pinion are both better punters in the league. I haven't looked up how good their special punt coverage is, but I assume it's not terrible. So I'm gonna stay with Atlanta there.
Drew?
Falcons. Joseph was ass last week. That guy pisses me off. That guy buzzkills every drive. We get a touchdown, misses the extra point. Buzzkill. Kickoff, kicks it out of bounds. Buzzkill. Koo is 16 of 17 this year, Ted. Yeah. 16 of 17. He has missed an extra point, but 16 of 17 is pretty solid. Falcons get my special teams. And I don't know if Patterson's playing. Is he playing?
Actually, old friend Mike Hughes is doing their punt returning.
Good for Mike Hughes. Mike One Knee Hughes. Okay, that's fine. I'm giving this to the Falcons. Not only that, last week, player's name escapes me. He did it in week 1. He jumped off sides last week against the Packers.
That Ward guy.
Jay Ward, that's it. The Packers kicker had doinked a field goal. The Vikings were going to get out of the first half, giving up no points on defense. Jay Ward jumps offside again, gave the Packers another chance, and the kicker drilled it. Yeah, the special teams last week was not very good on the road. I'm going to pick the Falcons here, too. Coaching. Drew, who you got for coaching?
I'm going to give it to KOC this week, and I usually never give him the check mark. His play calling's been much better the last 2 weeks, and I've been ripping him the last 2 months about his vanilla, whooshy play calling.
Yeah.
Been better the last 2 weeks, a little bit more creative, a little bit more off schedule when it's, second one. He's thrown it a couple times, and he's throwing it late when we're supposed to ice the game. I like that. Flores is on fire. Flores has done more than a tremendous job this year. I like the Vikings coaching staff in this one.
Arthur Smith strikes me as a substitute teacher that doesn't know how to run the audio-video equipment. So he wants to come in and play the video so he can just sit at the desk, and he doesn't know what he's doing.
Hey, you, Balake! Hey, you!
Yeah. So he has a kid come up here, fix this, get it running. I think he's a weird dude, man. I don't think he's a great coach. Their offensive coordinator, Dave Vergoen and Ryan Nielsen, I'm not really impressed with them, yet they're 4-4. They've had some adversity, and he's gotten them to 4-4. That said, like you said last week, Kevin O'Connell called a great game against Green Bay, very aggressive, got the Vikings out front, and kept the Vikings out front and didn't really let off the gas. I'm going to go with O'Connell and his staff this week as well, Dan. What about you?
I am also going to take the Vikings here. I like what O'Connell's been doing lately. The first few weeks of the year, I was really scratching my head with some of the things KOC was doing on offense. But lately, it's gotten my seal of approval. Weirdly, since we lost Jefferson, on the Falcons side, I get kind of bad vibes with Arthur Smith. He said a lot of not so great things in the media and kind of like downplay. People wanted Desmond Ritter to get benched, and he was calling them stupid for it. And now they just benched Ritter. So, and then also, I have checked around on some of the fan forums, and there's a lot of people who are saying free Bijan Robinson. 'Cause, they do like to hand the ball to Tyler Algier a lot, and he's got like 3.2 yards a carry. So I like, at least for offensive coaching, I like it more on the Viking side.
All right, and then finally, the intangibles. I'll take this one first. The Vikings need to circle the wagons and rally behind Jaren Hall, at least for this week. Give him a game plan that he's comfortable with, that matches his skill set, and KOC can get him plays that he can succeed at. I would expect early on the Vikings to run the ball and maybe do some short stuff just to get his confidence up, complete a couple passes, and then see how he does and just maybe stretch the field as the game goes on. Defense is going to have to step up in this game. If they can kind of blunt the Falcons able to run the ball, I think they have a great chance. Conversely, the Vikings are going to have to run the ball better than they have at any point this season. For the Falcons, Taylor Heineke, I think, is the wild card for them. Dan, you mentioned the intangible earlier about, he said sometimes he plays with a lucky rabbit's foot. He just kind of sometimes just pulls a play out of the hat, and the Vikings can't allow that to happen. So that's where I see that going. Drew, what about you?
My intangible is one of the things you mentioned, rallying around Jaren Hall. I think that is going to be a big intangible on the Vikings' part, and I think they want to let people know, no Cousins, no problem. We're going to win games. So I think they're going to rally together, and I like that for an intangible. I don't have any intangibles for the Falcons because I hate them.
Dan, what about you?
No, I think we've had a little too much agreeing here, so I'm actually going to go Falcons here. I think it's going to get loud in Atlanta. I think Hall might get a little rattled, and this Falcons team, they're absolutely in it. They're playing for the division, and they just kind of got embarrassed by a rookie quarterback on the road. And I think they're going to be highly motivated to get back and have a really good game on defense. So I'm going to go with the Falcons.
All right, so predictions. Drew, how do you see this game playing out?
Listen, the Falcons have a good defense, Ted. They have a really good defense. It's top 6 in the league. That is going to be a problem. I think this game comes down to stopping the Falcons on the ground and the red zone and how Jaren Hall deals with the pressure. They have to get touchdowns in the red zone. The defense has to make it easier for him. They have a good defense, but listen, the Falcons are no juggernaut on offense. They're not. The Falcons have finished under 20 points 4 times this year. And 2 of those times were under 10, when they scored 6 against the Lions, and they scored 7 the week later against the Jags. Week 6 and 7, they had 13 total points. They're not going to run you out of the stadium. And I think that sits well with the Vikings. This is like the perfect team to be playing for Hall's first start. I think so. I mean, they have a better defense and offense, but their offense isn't going to blow you off the field. So I think the Vikings can keep it close. I think it's going to be a field goal game. I'm not going to pick a winner either way because I haven't picked the last 3 weeks and we've won. So I'm just going to leave it with that's how I'm going to leave it. But I know the Vikings got a real shot at this game, and as long as they can keep the no turnovers going or the low turnovers going, I think they match up pretty well with Atlanta. But Atlanta matches up with us. We're 2 teams that are kind of mirrored image of themselves. We're both 4-4, looking to get that extra win to put us above 500. Going to be a tough game, Ted. It's going to be really tough and really close the whole way through.
Dan, how do you see this game playing out?
Boy, that was really good, Drew. I was going to say the same thing, field goal game. I will say this, I would feel pretty good betting on right now it's a 4.5 Falcons line. I feel pretty good about that because I feel like feel like it's going to be a 3 or maybe even like a 1 point win for either team. I expect it to be low scoring. I don't want to predict a winner right now because I'd like to see the injury report. Whether Drake London plays is really big. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Rookie fifth-round quarterbacks rarely do well. They rarely have a long career. They rarely have a productive career. But everybody thinks their rookie fifth-round quarterback is going to do well. I'm not so sure. We'll see. If ever a fifth-round rookie was going to succeed, he is in the right spot to do it in Minnesota. He's got a good offensive-minded coach, great weapons to throw to, a good offensive line. They need to figure out the running game, but I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk for Atlanta. I think the Vikings are going to hang tough, and I agree with you guys. It's going to be inside of a field goal that wins this. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so that is our preview. Dan, thanks so much for joining us. You got anything else you want to talk about over on Purple Pain Forums before we let you go?
Yeah, I recommend you come down and take a look. We got a lot of interesting articles. We got tons of action now with the trade deadline coming in. A lot of different articles. We're still talking about Kirk. We're always going to be talking about quarterbacks. And one more thing I'll throw in. I'm still working on my NFL Super Sim application. Maybe another time we can have a little chat, but it is a web app where you can have the current teams match up. You can determine which players are playing for which teams. And actually right now it is saying the line for this game should be Falcons by 3. So yeah, I think that's it for me. I really appreciate you guys giving me a chance to come on here and give my opinion. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. We'll have to do this again soon.